We got our special guest today, our dear friend Sherry from CultureALL. So let us begin with the main presentation, why you're here. And our guest speaker today is Sherry Gupta, the Executive Director of CultureALL. And Sherry, do you mind sharing about your background and CultureALL's background and history?
It would be a pleasure. I um, I'm from Iowa, and I grew up in a small town, rural Iowa, that happened to have an internationally focused college. It's Grinnell College. So somehow I ended up going from rural Iowa 5 blocks to my dorm at Grinnell College and discovered a whole new world. I think the experience stayed with me. I ended up marrying a man from India. I live cross culturally in my household with my in laws and raised 3 children who grew up in the Johnston School District as a biracial, bicultural family. And I spent some time at Principal International helping employees at the company learn how to live and work more effectively with people from other cultures. Through that time, I picked up the Global Awareness Training Program. And when I started having children, my neighbor called me up and asked if I would be her co-chair of the PTO Fine Arts Committee. And I told her, I don't know anything about fine arts. But she said, oh, we do this Cultural Arts Day. And that's when I had the epiphany. Oh my gosh, if we started with students at such a young age so that they grow up with the skill and grace to be able to work with anyone from around the world, now that would be very cool. So that's what led into the start of CultureALL.
That's so amazing. I've heard this story before and it's just so inspiring. And, we're going to go ahead and do this question and answer to get more information about CultureALL. So here we go, Sherry. How did CultureALL get organized? What are some of the values driving the organization and goals you are looking to accomplish?
Dan, because you have an audience that's focused on business and starting up businesses, I'll just share. People come to me and ask, how do you start a nonprofit?
Hmm,
And it really is like figuring out how to start a business. They're very similar.
that's right.
Um, we do have some differences. In some ways, it's a little bit harder
It is.
because you have to persuade more constituents about the value of your product. And because they aren't the one receiving your product, then you have to show evidence. You have to be able to measure the results in some kinds of ways.
All right.
But in terms of actually getting it started, it's the same of going to the Secretary of State, getting
Mhm,
that set up, um, applying for your tax exempt status,
mhm.
having your board of directors and having your bylaws and your articles of incorporation, all of that kind of paperwork in place. Um, and I want to put in a plug for Community CPA because Ying Sa was the person who helped me set up my initial bookkeeping for the organization
Very cool.
and just got me established. So that was very powerful, very helpful, brought a lot of peace of mind to that whole process. You asked about our values.
Hmm.
Um, when we started CultureALL, it was with a very different environment. It was 15 years ago,
I
and it
see.
was when we had this trajectory, we thought, of people get it about diversity and inclusion. And so the real challenge was more with regard to global competition and global mindedness and how we're part of a global economy, right?
Hmm.
So, how do we help Iowans understand the complexity of working in today's world? Well, then things in society started to shift where we realized that people are not quite as open and accepting of differences as we thought they were.
Right.
And so, in some ways, it feels like we've had to take a step back to some of those initial building blocks of understanding, okay, what is diversity? Why is it important? Why do we need to value it? And then build from there. So, what we talk about in terms of why this work is vital, the story narrative has really had to shift because of the shifts in our society.
It's true.
Um, and I'll just answer real quick in terms of the values. Our
Mhm.
personal values have to do with, for example, when we hire employees,
Mhm.
these are the values we expect them to have. The first one is
Right.
that they um, practice inclusion because it's a journey. It's not once and done. It's an ongoing practice to be inclusive. The second one is that there's personal interaction. And in today's world, of course, doing some Zoom interaction
Not the
counts as
same.
personal. But the idea that it's through hearing your personal story that we begin to break down some barriers. So CultureALL works really hard to bring people together. We want neighbor to learn from neighbor.
Mhm.
And then the third one is expansive thinking. There's a lot of times in the nonprofit world where we carry this story of poverty. And it was a few years ago when I decided CultureALL is done being poor. So we had to move into shifting a mindset of recognizing the abundance that we have. And it's not necessarily just abundance of the um, contributed income,
Right.
but it's also the abundance of people who want to help, the abundance of the cultural ambassadors who do the programs,
Mhm.
the abundance of um, community encouragement, and all those types of things.
Yeah. I want to go ahead and maybe shift and focus a little bit on your programs. Can you just highlight a few of your programs?
I'd be very happy to. Our marquee program
Hmm.
that we started with and that we feel is just center to everything that we do is the Cultural Ambassador Workshops. So let me tell you about who the cultural ambassadors are. These typically are people who were born in other countries, like you, Dan,
Hmm.
who have moved to the United States and specifically to Iowa, who live among us as our neighbors and our colleagues. And we recruit them and um, help them design these workshops that are hands on, engaging experiences designed to spark a curiosity so Iowans want to know more about the people around them. The workshops typically are 30 to 40 minutes. Most of them take place in the K through 12 school system.
Mm.
We do some in the community with libraries, the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, those types of places. And we're increasingly doing work in the corporate environment as well. Now, there, you see multicultural days there. That's an extension of the ambassador workshops. The ambassadors can go in and work with an entire school, or they might work with a single classroom,
Nice.
but either way. So, and then the next slide, you have some more listed there. We do community events, special celebrations. Um, Not so much at the moment, but we've had
Hmm.
a lot of fun in the past. Some of your viewers might have come to the Bollywood Ball a few
Hmm.
years ago. This picture here is related to a Brazilian event that we did. And
Fun.
we like to be able to feature a culture in a way that is immersive. So if you come to one of our events, not only will you have the food, you'll also have the music, the dancing, the storytelling, sharing of personal narratives, and all those types of things, just to learn a little bit more about another culture so that it feels familiar,
Hmm.
really is what we're trying to do. And let me emphasize this. It's my belief that Iowans, while they're nice people, or they want to be very nice people, they have a tendency to not ask questions
Hmm.
The reason they don't ask questions is because they don't want to offend,
Yeah.
or in some cases, they don't want to appear stupid.
Hmm.
So, what CultureALL tries to do is provide just enough knowledge and enough experience so that they want to go out and learn more, or they want to ask the question of the Indian woman about why do you have a dot on your forehead?
Right.
And then that leads the conversation into much deeper learning and interaction. Other events, other programs that we do, the consulting services and the diversity, equity, and inclusion work, our approach is very different from
Hmm.
what most diversity consultants have to offer. We like to start by getting the data, finding out what kind of mindsets people have when it comes to responding to differences. Once you know what kind of mindset they have, then you can put in place the right kind of activity to help them develop. So think for a moment about going to a diversity training.
Hmm.
A lot of people, when they get told that they need to go to diversity training, there's sort of like this dread. They really don't want to do it. And there are a couple of reasons why. Sometimes because they've been there, done that, they don't feel like they're learning much from it. They need
Yeah.
something more. They need
Hmm.
something more personal, something that's going to be more um, empathy provoking.
Hmm.
But then there's another group of people that doesn't want to go because they are tired of being told that they have privilege, that they are biased.
Hmm.
Um, they're tired of having to be politically correct, for example.
Yeah.
So, knowing that diversity training does not serve everybody, then you
Hmm.
have to figure out, okay, where is this person and why, what kinds of activities are going to be appropriate for them to develop to the next stage of understanding.
That's true.
So we have an assessment tool that helps identify where people are.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
That's
click
okay.
that button. Sure. But our third question, we know that you try to get members from diverse backgrounds out to speak about their culture and heritage. So can you tell us about that initiative and highlight a few engagements that have occurred in the community?
We have a program that's coming up actually in January. It's in collaboration with the YMCA.
Okay,
And every year, the YMCA does a program. It's called the Martin Luther King Jr. Prayer Breakfast.
I see.
And then following that prayer breakfast, Cultural will be hosting an open book event. And the open book event is particularly featuring voices and experiences of African Americans
Oh,
who live in the community. And they tell their stories about significant life experiences. Perhaps some of them helps them understand more who they are. But the way it works is um, we would go and hear their story. So we're the readers. They share their story as an open book.
oh,
And then we're able to ask questions because there are a lot of things that we think we may understand about somebody based on what we've learned in the media, in the news, on television. But until we actually sit and have a conversation,
mhm,
it's it's distant, right? It's objective. But when you sit with somebody, then it becomes real. So that gets
absolutely.
back to our core value of personal interactions.
I think that personal interaction is very, very important. And I know, uh, for example, in a mission trip that I've been to, I had like this idea of what it would be like. And until I actually get there and talk with somebody, hear their story, and it's just earth shattering, right?
Right,
So it's
right.
just amazing with what you do.
Yeah.
Our fourth question, Sherry, during the COVID, How has Cultural adapted and shifted its programs and services? It's a hard time, and we're all shifting at this point, and we want to hear more about Cultural.
Yeah, thank you. There are a couple of ways that we've shifted. Of course, in the spring is when we do a lot of multicultural days in the schools. And when schools shut down, we thought, okay, well, we could sit back and take a vacation,
Mhm.
or we could jump right in, figure out how to use technology, and get prepared for this pandemic situation to settle in for a while.
That's right.
So, of course, that's what we did. The cultural ambassadors started learning how to do presentations via Zoom. Now, imagine you're used to going in and working with a group of kindergarten students and engaging them in Mexican games. You can't do that through Zoom,
No,
right? So,
no.
how do you change your presentation so that it stays engaging,
Mhm.
keeps them active, but through an internet channel?
Mhm.
So that's what they learned to do, and some of them ended up producing videos that we share with the schools. Some of them do a live stream presentation. So the transition has happened fairly well. Um, the Besides the pandemic, we had the falling out from the killing of George Floyd, which raised a lot of realization that we really do have implicit bias, that there really are things that we have not seen, and now we can see it. We don't know
Mhm.
what's there, but we know that there's something that we can't see. And so Cultural has been able, we were preparing before that, but when that happened and the CEOs signed on to an equity commitment, that allowed us to be able to reach more corporations to say, Cultural has this system. We can help you identify the mindsets that your employees are working with when they're making decisions and help them see where they might have some blind spots. Once we know where they are, then we can help move them from where they are to where they actually want to be. And then you can put in place the kinds of policies and procedures and practices that need to happen within your organization to really be able to achieve equity.
Yeah, with all the amazing events, programs that you guys put together, I'm sure all of our audience are asking the same question. How can someone get involved and support the current initiatives, volunteer opportunities, and employment opportunities? What do you think, Sherry?
Well, I'm just, top of mind for me right now, we're hiring a salesperson. So please, if anybody knows a really good salesperson that would be
Okay.
a good match with our values
Hmm.
and our mission, send them our way. We're always recruiting ambassadors or open book storytellers, and to be qualified, you
Uh-huh.
simply need to be somebody who cares about your culture, cares about your background, and likes to be able to share that with others. We'll help you do the rest.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. You know, um, folks, uh, I know you guys are impressed. Yeah, Sherry is just very down to earth, very real person. And, you know, I'm sure you guys are all wanting to get involved somehow, some way. If you know somebody like Sherry's asking, feel free to um, call, or you guys can contact us, and then we'll pass the message along. Okay. And we want to hear from you. We want to have you be more involved in this mission that Sherry's provided through Culture All and doing every day. So if you guys have any questions, let us know. Okay. And um, let me see. Do we have? I know we have our chat box. And questions, I think I should have announced that people can drop your questions in the Q&A um, earlier in the presentation, but feel free to let us know if you guys have questions separately uh, to us, and we'll definitely get those answered somehow, some way, as soon as possible. And right now we are right on time, and let me go ahead and thank Sherry for her time and her information about Culture All and what all they do. And we can't do this without you. And we're doing this webinar because of you. We want you all to be better informed than yesterday and strive to be better every day. And we want to be involved. If you have questions um, and are curious about all the webinars that we've done in the past, feel free to visit us at www.communitycpa.com and let us know. And thank you again, Sherry, for all that you do. And you are always an inspiration to us all. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and wish all of our audience a happy holiday and enjoy, um, the most that we can and count our blessings because they are there. And with that, we'll go ahead and conclude our webinar today. And thank you all for your time. Thank you, Sherry, for your time.
Thank you, Dan. That's a pleasure.